Hello guys, this is the Polyglot Programmer, and today we're going to go over some basic UI elements in Godot. The goal here is to create this pause menu, and as a bonus feature for this video, we're also going to add some functionality, and we're actually going to pause the scene and the scene tree. You're going to guys see one of the ways that you can do that. So let's get started. So to get started, we're going to create a new scene. And I'm going to start with the pause menu itself, right? And this new scene is going to be of user interface, which adds a control node as a parent. And here we're going to call it pause menu, right? And I'm going to call it pause menu. And now we're going to add a child node of type panel, right? Panel. Yes, and a panel it's basically a layer that it's a common practice to use a layer as a base for other UI elements that you're gonna add. And in this case, we're just gonna use it as a layer, as a background, so we can go on top of your viewport. The cool thing about the panel is that it does have the ability to change its properties by using the style. So for instance, it's a very common practice to use a panel instead of a color rect because of the properties that we can change. We're going to see that in a minute. For now, the only thing that we're going to do here is that we're going to call this back panel, right? And we're going to set the anchor preset to full rect, which basically stretches the panel to the size of the screen. And no matter the size of the screen, this is always going to be filling the entire screen. Great. So now the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to add another panel, right? And we're going to call this guy a center panel. And this guy is going to be the one in the middle here that's going to hold all the buttons and everything else. So for this, we're going to actually anchor to the center, right? And we're going to set a minimum size here on layout property, custom minimum size, and the minimum size is going to be 400 through 380. I already built this earlier, so you guys can trust me on this, but of course feel free to customize this to whatever you guys think fits your project, right? Great. So now we have this panel, and we're going to add a child again, and this time is going to be a VBox container, right? And the same thing that we did before, we're going to come in here, and this time I'm going to tell it to anchor full rect again, which is going to stretch to the parent. And in this case, the parent is the center panel, so the VBox is always going to be the size of the center panel, no matter what size we get it, right? And the VBox container is pretty cool because the VBox, you don't really need to worry about the location of your child objects, because every child object that you add is always going to stack one on top of the other. And this is very useful for menus and things like that. So the first thing that we're going to add in here is that we're going to add a label, right? And I'm going to say here pause menu, right? Cool. Yeah. This, and I'm just gonna, for now, we're just gonna center. Great. Let's give it a cool name. Awesome. And after this, we're gonna add a separator. And there are two types of separator. There's a vertical one and there's a horizontal one. Since we're using a vertical box, we want a horizontal separator. And if you're confused about that, you can always check the icon. Separator basically does what the name says. It just creates some separation in between two objects, right? And in this case, we're gonna set the separation to 50. 50 is fine. And I'm gonna talk about team and team overrides in a little bit. For now, I just want to finish building our UI. We're gonna add 3 buttons here, right? Let's give it a name to our button. Let's give it a text, actually, resume. Let's give it a name, resume. Awesome. And now we're gonna actually just duplicate this button 3 times, right? And we're gonna change This is gonna be options, and this other guy here will be main menu, right? So you have three options. You pause the game, you can go back to the main menu, you can open the options, you can resume. The main menu is gonna be, we're gonna say back to main, not top main, to main, and options, it will say option. Great. So this is good, right? But this is actually okay. Now we have all our UI elements, but it's not really looking great. It has all this empty space here. The buttons are way too small. So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to customize our label, right? As you saw on we changing the theme override properties for separator, every control node has this theme and theme overrides, and the properties they change depending on which node you're talking about, right? So for the separator, if you go to theme override, you have constant and you have some styles. For label, if you come here, you go to theme override, you see that you have color, you have constant, which is you can add an outline, shadow, and whatnot. Font, you have a special font, and font sizes. Let's change the font size to 48. I think is good, and let's add a style to it, right? And style, to add a style, you just click here, you select what type of style. You can use a texture, you can use empty, which it does nothing for a label. You can use a box line. In our case, we're just going to use a flat, which actually gives us a lot of different options. One, obviously, is the color. So let's add a background color. But you could also add a border. Like here, you could say, yeah, there you go. Now we have a little, oh, this is border radius. So yeah, so we made our border a bit rounded. This, it looks cool actually. Border width. No, this is too much. Let's, okay, this looks pretty, right? Cool. So this is it for the label. As you can see, we can change the theme override, styles, and you have a bunch of properties here that we can play around with. And every control node will have that. Now let's go to the button. And with the button, we're actually gonna do a similar thing. We're gonna change the theme, but we're actually gonna use the theme option. And here we're gonna create a new theme, right? And we're gonna save it, right? And when we save this, the cool thing is that when we save, is that we can come to every other button and we can reuse the same thing. And that means that, for example, when I change the font size on this guy, it does change for everyone, which is really cool. Oh, this guy is not, because I didn't really choose. Let's go back here. Let's go back. File one, and boom, there you go. Now we have our options menu looking a lot nicer. Let's save our menu, our scene, and there you go. Our options menu is looking a bit nicer. There's a little bit of empty space here. To deal with that, we can just come to the VBox container. We can come to theme override again, constants, and let's add a little bit of separation here, just so it fills our background panel, and it looks a lot nicer, right? And this, okay, so we're able to create a really somewhat pretty and pause menu. And I hope this was just very interesting quick start for the Godot UI stuff. So now we're gonna actually plug this in and actually create a pause functionality for our game, right? And to do that, before we add some code into this guy, I'm actually going to come in here. I'm going to create a new scene. I'm going to call this a 2D scene, and I'm going to call it Game Manager. Let's pretend that this is going to be the guy that's going to be always on the background of your game and going to manage a bunch of different stuff, including pause. Right? This is one of the ways that you can implement pause. There are other ways, of course. right? And to do that, we're gonna add a child node here, and this guy is gonna be called canvas layer. Canvas layer, as you guys can see here, is a node used for independent rendering of objects within the 2D scene. What does that mean? It means nothing to us right now, but actually this basically means that it creates a separate 2D layer on top of a viewport that has an independent transform. So this is a very common and common case for dealing with UIs. In this way you can keep the UI layer separate from your actual viewport. You don't really have to do this, but it's a best practice and it is recommended that you use a canvas layer. But again, feel free to add if you disagree or agree, or if you have any other opinions. I would love to know about them in the comment. And inside our layer, we're actually going to just drag our pause menu. And there you go, our pause menu is here, and it's worked and it's done. See you next time. No, I'm kidding. It's actually not done. Now we're going to actually implement our pause feature functionality in our game, and to do that we're going to start with our game manager code. And let's this is fine, I'm not going to worry too much about naming conventions here. I already have a little bit of code here that I'm just going to copy and paste, and I'm going to explain to you guys what this all means, of course. So for the game manager code, what we have here is a class name. So we're defining a class name for a game manager. We're defining a signal which changes from like true and false, the state of the game, if it's pause or not, and signals that to the rest of the game. And I do have a video about signals and auto loads and global signals, so I do recommend you guys watching. I'll add that to the description. Don't forget to check that out. Here I have a Boolean variable, which is game paused, set to false, so the game starts not paused, of course. And I have a getter setter, which I also have a video about getters and setters, so don't forget to check that out. And here I'm returning the state of the variable. Here I'm setting, when I set the variable, of course I override the value. I set the state of the game, I set the scene tree of the game to pause. When you set to pause, basically everything that is supposed to be paused, including physics, inputs, everything, the process stops, right? And you can read more about this if you hover over this, hold Control and click, and here it has a little bit of a better description than I can provide. You can check that out later. And here I just broadcast my signal, right? And here I have a little bit of an input that waits for this action pause, which we're gonna define right now. Project settings, input, pause, and we're gonna set this to scale. Right, great, awesome. And we have to save our thing. Great, good. So our game manager code is done. Really simple stuff going on over here, and now we're gonna go back to a pause menu, right? And the pause menu, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna add a little bit of code here, and for the pause menu, the code is also very simple. So here we have an exported variable for the game manager. Since one is gonna be child of the other, this is a very easy way to interact between the two of them. There are other ways, of course. And here in the ready function, we are hiding the UI element, the scene, and we're connecting to the toggle game pause signal from the game manager class, and we're assigning to this method over here that takes this variable, as you guys remember. And if the game is paused, it shows the pause menu and it adds the focus to the resume button, and if it's true, if it's false, and hides the pause menu. And I also added a little bit of I just connected a signal to the resume button here, to this guy that sets the game to false, and if this is set to false, then it's gonna hide itself. Great. So what's gonna happen if I run this now, right? Let's now, actually it's not gonna work because I do need to connect this guy, right? Game manager. And if I hit play, I'm gonna set the PC screen. Great, game is not paused. If I hit escape, game is paused. And now if I hit escape again, oh my god, it's not working. I broke something. What did I break? So let's see, what did I broke? What do I have to fix? If you're a little bit familiar with Godot, you probably noticed something in common with every node, which is these properties down here. And specifically this one, this dictates how this node is going to behave when the game is paused and when it's not paused, right? And if you hover over this, it does describe every state of this property. And the full property is inherit, which is actually which inherits from every other node. And if you didn't change anything, the default is actually pausable, meaning that the process for this node, it will stop when the game is paused, right? When you actually set the get3 to paused. So the game manager is supposed to run in the background of your game, in this case, always. So you do not want this guy to be paused ever. So we want to change this to always, right? And if you hover over this again, you're gonna see that always means that always process, continue process always, ignoring the scene3 pause property. So this guy is gonna run forever and always. Great. And the pause menu is actually the opposite, right? In the pause menu, you actually want this guy set to when paused. Why? You hover over this again, it says when paused, only process when the scene3 is paused. So whenever the game is paused, this guy is gonna be running. So it's the opposite, right? So that's, and in fact, when you set this to unpause, you can even see that this guy is grayed out. Why? Because the default is that this guy is not running at any time by default. And this guy is only going to be run, only going to start run when the game is actually paused. So if you hit play now, and you see that now the game is paused, and now if I hit escape, the game is not paused. And if I hit escape again, the game, and the other way around. So the game is not paused, and now the game is paused, and now the game is not paused, and now the game is paused, and if I hit resume, the same thing happens. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you a really good quick start initiation on how the UI for Godot works. Feel free to add any comments and questions down below, and I'll see you next time.